The Honeybee by Kristen Hall. A field, a tree, climb it and see. For miles, all around you, grow wild and free flowers. But then, shh, what's that? Do you hear it? You're near it. It's closer. It's coming. It's buzzing. It's humming. A bee! 4 tiny wings. They buzz and they sing. They're clapping and flapping. The busy bees lapping. Lap, lap, lap. Tap, tap, tap. Searching, perching. This one! This is the flower the bee has chosen. This is the flower the pollen grows in. This is the flower, its color so bright. Its sweet blooming scent calls the bee from its flight. Such a long trip. It's time for a sip. Sugary, watery nectar. There now, it drills now. The bee sips and spills now. There now, it swills now. It sits oh so still now. There now, it fills now. It's back to the hill now. More pollen, more nectar. It's mealtime. Buzz, buzz. Buzz, buzz. A crowd, swarming and teeming and loud, flapping, flying, landing, prying. All of this nectar, it's ours, it's ours. They work on the flowers for hours and hours. Until little bees with heavy sacks, lifting, shifting, turning back. Zoom they race, zoom they chase, zoom they zoom and pick up the pace. And then, zoom! They see it up ahead. Our hive, our hive, our hiding place. Watch them arrive. Watch how their hive buzzes alive. Buzz. Where are the flowers you found today? Dance for us, foragers. Show us the way. A dance begins. Waggle, wiggle. The dance is lovely. Tremble, jiggle. The dance goes straight now. In a line, a figure 8 is the final sign. Oh, now we know where to go. Thanks for the secrets, and thanks for the show. New foragers leave on a searching mission, while house bees march forward with hungry ambition. Chew, chew, that's what we do. We suck out the nectar, we suck it straight through. Chew, chew, we're changing its makeup. We're giving the nectar a chemical shake-up. Chew, chew, we make it like glue. Make it thick, make it stick. Make it slick, make it new. Chew, 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 chew. At last, we're finally through. But there's more to do at home. Like fill the honeycomb. They jam its cells with nectar plaster, then rev up their engines and beat their wings faster. Whoosh! They're strong despite their size. Swoosh! The nectar cools and it dries. It's getting thicker now. Wings move quicker now. Fan! Fast! Pump! Blast! We did it! We did it! It's honey! At last! And now to keep it safe. Tiny honey cells are capped. Liquid gold is sealed and trapped. And only when it's needed most, a hungry day, will these vaults be tapped. Outside the hive come shorter days, cooler winds and softer rays, fewer eggs to birth and raise. With the queen less busy, the hive's less buzzy. and bees amass, all soft and fuzzy. Come now, rest, join our nest, huddle and cuddle, the winter's our test. Winter. Pop, a bud, drip, some mud. Creatures stir in the melting snow, and inside the hive, the bees, they know. Hum, it's springtime. Hum, life anew. One little bee in a tree knows what to do. Watch it zoom. A field, a tree, climb it and see. From a faraway hive flew this hard-working, honey-sweet bee. The end. The author wrote this story for an important reason. The honeybee is one of our world's most marvelous creatures, and sadly, it's in danger. When she wrote this book, she was hoping that you might grow a new appreciation for the honeybee, and that you'll join her in caring about its future. Honeybees are beautiful creatures. They're just like us. They live in families, called colonies, and in homes, called hives. They work hard. Each bears on its tiny back a big responsibility toward the larger unit. Honeybees hum, they buzz, they zoom, they sip, they dance, and they even nestle. And while we shouldn't get too close to honeybees, they can sting. I wanted you to have an up-close look at the wonderful things they do. Without honeybees, we'd be in trouble. Honeybees fly from plant to plant, hunting for and sipping nectar. While they travel, they spread pollen. The pollen they spread causes seeds to form, and the new seeds lead to new plants. We rely heavily on these plants for our food, clothing, and shelter. Don't be afraid of bees. Honeybees want nectar and pollen, not to sting or harm you. When bees fly near, stay still, and stay calm too. Bees can actually smell fear. If you stay still and calm, chances are the bees will quickly decide to just fly away. Also, avoid going near beehives. Bees are territorial, but as long as you stay out of their way, they'll stay out of yours. All right, boys and girls, let's get started on our own honeycomb beehive. For part 1 of this project, you will need a pencil and a Sharpie, orange and yellow in your choice of either markers, crayons, watercolor paint, or colored pencils. You will also need blue for your background. All right, boys and girls, to get started, you are going to need a hexagon. We're going to create the honeycomb that our bee is going to sit on top of. There was a hexagon sheet with a bee provided for you. If you don't have a printer, you will have to make your own. Hexagons are actually not that hard to make. If you are not able to print this out and you need to draw one, this is all you got to do. You need a straight line and then 2 slanted diagonal lines that go down, and then hexagons have 6 sides, so that's 1, 2, 3. So we're going to do the exact same thing on the bottom. This time, slant the other way, and then close it up. Voila, you have a hexagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sides. And then we're going to cut this out. So if you were able to print this, you can cut out either one of these. Now, I would suggest only doing the big one if you have a really large piece of paper you're planning to do this on. Otherwise, I would go with the smaller one. Now, if you are printing or cutting this on some pretty thin paper, you can make this a little bit thicker by putting it on like a piece of cardboard or something that's a little bit sturdier for you to trace around. You may not have that option, and that's fine, but if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, you might want to trace it onto something a little bit thicker. I just found this backing that was on a pad of paper I had. A box from your pantry would work, or you might want to just look and see if there's any cardboard or anything that was about to go in the trash. Now, I could have used this too. It's just something thicker is going to be much easier to trace around. Now, boys and girls, as you get started with this, you are going to use your stencil to create hexagons over your entire paper. Now, to create an interesting composition is a big juicy art word for where things are placed on your paper. We are going to have some spaces not filled and some spaces filled to have a little variety. So when you start your first one, as soon as you're finished with that, you are going to have to decide where you want to line this up. Are you going to put it down, or are you going to put it up? Are you going to put it underneath? Now, I don't think it matters. I think you should decide where you want to start leading your hexagons. Now, every time that you make one, you have to make sure that your sides line up perfectly. Otherwise, your whole honeycomb is going to be off. So make sure you're paying attention to where you line them up. Now, you can have them start to go in different directions. They don't have to continue going in the same way. If you want to have some go up and some go down, that's fine. I only have one requirement, that whatever the size your paper is, you should fill it. So if you have a very small piece of paper, have honeycomb that fills your small piece. If you have a large piece, you're going to need a bigger honeycomb. I have a very large piece, so I'm going to need a lot of these. You are going to notice that as you start doing this, it's really important that you cut this very straight. Otherwise, your hexagon lines aren't going to match up. Now, I have a row at the top that I'm pretty happy with. I like that some of it goes further down and some goes further up. Now, I'm just going to go down. Now, as I start using this for the second row, you can see I have to line up two spaces now. I have to line it up here and here. So it's not just one line, it's now two lines I have to match up. Do you see how it fits in there? Just like a little puzzle. And then I don't have to trace all the sides anymore. I only have to trace the other four sides. Now in here, do you see how my line kind of went off a little bit? That's okay. Now I'm lining up three lines. So you can see as you continue, you have to trace less and less. But because that went off a little bit, I am going to just fix that so that all my corners match up. If they start to overlap funny, I wouldn't worry about that, because as soon as we're going to outline this with Sharpie, you're going to be able to cover any lines that don't match up just right anyway. So if your corners are just a little off, I think once we go over that with Sharpie, you'll be able to hide that. Okay, boys and girls, now's the time to fill in your honeycomb. Now, you might be a little bit curious about what choices you have. Now, depending on what you have at home to use, everything is going to look just a smidge different, but it's all going to be the same idea as far as how you're going to fill each hexagon. I will show you each one of these and then you decide which one you like best. You are only going to need orange and yellow. Marker, as long as it is a washable marker, a water-based marker like the Crayola markers that you see me using, can also be used as paint if you want to put some water over it, or you can fill it in just like this. Now, because these are water-based, as I get to my edges, they will mix a little bit. So if I go over my edge just a smidge, you see how the yellow and the orange is mixing, even though I'm not using water. I can do that, or I can take a little water and go over it too, but I think it's mixing pretty nice just like this. So now I have a nice golden looking hexagon. If you want to use crayon, same thing, except crayon might take you a little bit longer. However, I think it does look kind of neat when you go around like this and make your crayon lines kind of almost like giant zigzags, and then get your middle. Just make sure that you fill the whole thing. Now I'm going to go over the top of my orange a little bit to fill in any of those white spots. If you choose crayon, your hand is going to get more of a workout, because depending on how many hexagons you have, that could take you a little while, and you know you got to push hard to get in all the spaces so that you have a nice full hexagon. Colored pencil would be exactly the same thing. Now, one thing about colored pencils, depending on how hard you push, you'll get light or dark. So I did that somewhat light. I could go even lighter. I could go even darker. It just depends. Colored pencils are another one that are going to take much longer to fill in because they just don't cover as much area as something like a marker does. So if you're going to choose colored pencils, that's something that you're only going to want to pick if you feel like you have the time to sit and fill all of that in. And keep in mind, it is not going to mix. Nothing will mix together. Watercolor is probably going to be one of your fastest choices and look pretty great. So again, you only need orange and yellow. Now, one thing that might be a little different to use with the watercolor. You will only want to use watercolor if you have thick paper. If you don't have thick paper, don't choose this. This just isn't going to work the way that you want it to. Because it could so easily tear your paper. Now, I would also say, because if you do choose watercolor, because you do have thicker paper that you can use, this is one you might actually want to stick a little red in there. Not a lot, because you know that red is powerful. But one thing about watercolor is that it's going to mix the best out of all of these options. So I'm going to put a little red on the edge. And then I'm going to put a little more yellow in there, because I'm going to mix those to make it nice and dark. So there is all of your options. You decide which one you like the best and go ahead and start filling in your honeycomb. Now, boys and girls, you can see that I decided to use markers. I have some washable brush markers that I used. If you used markers too, that's fine. Now, you can see that I left white spaces. Now, the only reason I did that was because I'm planning to use water to mix my colors together. Now, if you used crayon or colored pencil, that is not something you would be doing. If you did marker and you left white spaces and you have some thicker paper, you may do this, of course. If you used watercolor, your colors are already all nice and mixed. So if you would like to fill in white spaces this way, you can. If you have white spaces and you are not planning to use water, then please go back over them and fill your white spaces in more. When I mix my colors together, I want to show you the difference between starting with your darker color and starting with your lighter color. If you start with orange first, it is going to drastically overpower your yellow. You see that? See how I'm also kind of going around in circles to do that? It's much more orange. Now, if I start with the yellow first, which is our lightest color, and go into the orange, instead, you're going to see that pop of yellow way better because the orange hasn't taken over that yellow. So if you want to have a little bit more of a highlight happening and that little glow, do you see how much brighter the yellow is compared to this one? Now, you could do a combination of both of those things. That's totally fine. But it depends on what you want. Now, this one looks like a lot of orange, whereas this one you see both colors. I kind of like to have both colors, so that's what I'm going to do. All right, boys and girls, for your background, choose a blue. Choose a couple of blues, whatever you want. I have 3 blues that I'm going to use. Now, for your background, I kind of thought it would look interesting to have a sky color, especially since orange and blue are complementary colors. Complementary colors look really good next to each other. They complement one another. You also might remember that there are colors that don't mix. So you can see I waited to get my blue on here until this was dry. If I tried coloring this when my orange was still all wet, I would have a whole lot of brown happening. As I continue to color this in. So you can see what I'm doing is I am outlining around the honeycomb first so that I don't accidentally go into the orange and get brown. I am trying to make myself a little barrier, kind of a fence, a blue fence around my honeycomb so that as soon as I'm done, I can go a little bit faster, filling in all the edges. As soon as I'm done with this, I'm doing this with one color, but after this, I'm going to use a few colors. I'm using marker right now. You can use whatever you want. The background tends to be large and have a lot of open space, so if you want to paint it, go ahead. I am now going to fill in a little bit more with some different blues. And you are really going to see your honeycomb just pop after you do this because blue and orange complement each other and look Fabulous. All right, boys and girls, that is part 1 of your honeycomb beehive project. Step 2, part 2, will be creating your bee.